imagine visiting your doctor for back pain or weaker grip strength, only to learn these changes could point to early brain issues worth checking with a professional. Not every warning sign of dementia relates to memory. Researchers find that movement, sensory changes, and even sleep problems may show up years before clear memory loss. In this video, we'll go through 10 specific warning signs you can watch for, explain step by step, so you understand what they mean and when they matter. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and share if you've noticed any of these changes in daily life. Some of the earliest clues can be seen in how the body moves. Posture and gait changes. Posture and walking style give important clues about what the brain is doing long before memory loss becomes visible. Researchers now consider changes in gait and stance to be among the earliest observable warning signs of dementia, often appearing years ahead of cognitive decline. 3 key signals to watch for are straightforward. First, shuffling or taking noticeably shorter steps, as if the feet are reluctant to lift. Second, leaning to one side or showing a slumped posture while standing or moving. And third, frequent stumbles, near falls, or unexplained loss of balance. These patterns are not always caused by arthritis or stiff joints. They may indicate that the brain is struggling with coordination. If these changes appear, one practical step is to keep a simple record of any recent falls, balance problems, or difficulties with walking. Then bring that list to a primary care doctor or a neurologist for evaluation. Regular physical activity and strength training can also support both mobility and brain health, helping to preserve function over time. Paying attention to how someone carries themselves reveals far more about the brain than most people realize. And just as important as how we stand or walk is how we use our hands in daily life. Declining grip strength, a weaker grip, can be an early signal that brain-muscle communication is changing in ways most people would not expect. While many assume fading hand strength is just part of aging or less exercise, research shows that reduced grip strength in older adults is consistently linked with a greater risk of developing dementia later in life. This connection does not mean weakness causes dementia, but it highlights how closely muscle function reflects the state of the nervous system. Grip strength matters because it is simple to measure, yet it tells a larger story about how effectively the brain sends messages through the spinal cord and out to the muscles. Large muscles, like those in the legs or back, often compensate for years before subtle decline becomes noticeable. The hands, however, reveal small changes more quickly, making grip strength one of the earliest physical signs that neural signaling may not be as sharp as before. This is why researchers consider hand strength a valuable early marker. What feels like weaker muscles often points to reduced efficiency in the brain's motor pathways. Daily life creates countless small tests for grip strength, many of which become challenging without warning. One of the most recognizable examples is having trouble opening jars or containers that were once simple to twist. Another is dropping objects more often than usual or struggling to carry grocery bags with the same ease. These are not just inconveniences. They can indicate that the brain is losing some control over coordination, timing, and precision of movement. Unlike arthritis, which causes localized stiffness or joint pain, dementia-related grip decline shows up as a more generalized weakness, even when the joints appear normal. For caregivers or family members, these signs become important clues. If someone frequently avoids activities that require hand strength, like cooking, fastening clothing, or handling packages, it might not just be frustration or reduced interest. Instead, it may reflect a hidden neurological shift. Noticing these difficulties early can prevent them from being dismissed as unimportant and instead treated as meaningful signals of broader changes in brain function. One of the most helpful ways to check grip strength is to bring up concerns during a routine medical appointment. A doctor can rule out common, reversible causes of weakness such as arthritis, vitamin deficiencies, or thyroid problems. If those explanations are excluded, Further evaluation may include a simple hand strength test, often using a small device called a dynamometer. The doctor may also recommend occupational therapy or a structured hand strengthening program. These approaches not only support independence, but may also protect long-term brain health because physical activity and resistance training are strongly linked with better cognitive outcomes across many studies. Asking your doctor whether a basic strength check or therapy makes sense is a practical first step. The emotional toll of weakening grip strength is often overlooked, but it can quietly erode confidence and independence. For example, someone who once enjoyed cooking may withdraw if they cannot handle pots, utensils, or packaging. Social activities may also be avoided for fear of embarrassment when struggling with simple tasks. By recognizing grip decline as more than just lost strength, families can adapt with supportive tools such as utensils or handles designed for easier use, allowing loved ones to remain engaged in daily life for longer. The difference between ordinary aging and neurological weakness is subtle but telling. Normal age-related decline tends to affect strength evenly across many muscles, while dementia-related weakness appears unpredictably. A person may still walk with good energy, yet find that holding a cup or writing quickly exhausts the hand. These inconsistencies point to disrupted signaling in the brain rather than simple muscle fatigue. Paying attention to such irregularities helps families catch potential warning signs before memory symptoms become prominent. What makes declining grip strength powerful as an indicator is its visibility. Unlike memory lapses, which may require careful questioning, grip weakness shows itself directly and repeatedly in everyday routines. Each time a jar resists opening, an object slips, or grocery bags feel heavier than they should, the hands may be signaling an important underlying change. Listening to these signals can make the difference between postponing help and moving toward early protective action. By viewing grip strength as more than just muscle capacity, it becomes a practical window into brain health. Detecting weakness early gives patients and families a chance to strengthen what can be strengthened, adapt where necessary, and keep a closer watch on cognitive health overall. While some decline in strength is expected with age, unexpected or progressive hand weakness deserves special attention. It points to potential changes in the nervous system that may otherwise remain hidden until more disruptive symptoms appear. Recognizing reduced grip strength as a red flag redefines how we interpret small frustrations in daily tasks. Instead of brushing them off as irritations, they can be reframed as useful early warnings that help families take action sooner. This proactive mindset not only protects independence, but also clears the way for better preparation should cognitive symptoms appear later on. And just as weakening hands reveal what the brain may be struggling to control, another set of clues emerges when people lose their natural sense of direction or find themselves confused in familiar spaces. Spatial awareness problems. One of the most telling early changes in dementia shows up when the brain struggles with spatial awareness. This isn't just about occasionally feeling disoriented. It involves the brain's difficulty processing visual spatial information, something commonly reported in early Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia. Spatial awareness allows us to judge distances, navigate spaces, and understand where our body sits in relation to objects around us. When this ability starts to falter, ordinary movements and routines can suddenly become unsafe or confusing. These difficulties often reveal themselves in ways most families dismiss at first. Someone may get lost in a supermarket they have shopped in for years, unable to retrace steps to the checkout. They might bump into familiar furniture at home, clipping the corner of a table or scuffing into a doorframe when turning. Or they misjudge the height of a step or curb, catching their foot and stumbling where they once walked with ease. Each of these moments feels like clumsiness, but together they mark an important signal that spatial skills are breaking down in a way that suggests more than distraction or aging. The most noticeable sign to watch for is disorientation in surroundings that should feel automatic. Families sometimes report that a loved one struggles to find the exit in a familiar store or hesitates when walking a route they previously knew by heart. This repetitive confusion is different from occasional forgetfulness because it involves locations and layouts that should be encoded deeply in memory and muscle. When orientation falters in these settings, it signals a change in the brain's ability to reliably map and recall space. Another common red flag is a pattern of bumping into objects, especially in the home. Someone may graze the same wall turning through a hallway or knock a hip against the dining table edge without fully realizing it. These repeated collisions go beyond occasional slips in attention and point toward a deeper problem with judging relative positioning. Over time, this type of misjudgment erodes confidence in moving around the home freely, leading to hesitation and restricting activity. A third warning sign is difficulty with stairs, curbs, or uneven pavement. Misjudging the distance to the next step, lifting the foot too little to clear an edge, or stepping down before the ground can create dangerous falls. Caregivers sometimes notice this when walking outdoors, where familiar terrain suddenly becomes risky. Of all the cues, repeated trouble navigating steps or curbs carries the greatest risk for injury and may be the clearest signal of spatial decline. These challenges matter because safety is directly tied to spatial awareness. A body that cannot accurately gauge where it is in space increases the likelihood of trips, spills, or falls. While a single accident may have many causes, a pattern across settings is what makes this distinct. If disorientation occurs both indoors and outdoors across different days and times, it is not likely to be random chance. These recurring patterns are what families should treat as indicators that neurological evaluation is needed. It is also important to recognize that visual and cognitive issues often overlap. Someone struggling to pour water without spilling may not have failing eyesight, but rather difficulty integrating what they see with how to move their hand. Likewise, drifting while driving or braking too late does not necessarily point to poor reflexes alone, but to problems judging distance and space on the road. These examples show why labeling the changes as just clumsy overlooks their true importance. One straightforward step is to treat these warning signs seriously and rule out other causes. The first move should be scheduling an eye exam because vision changes like cataracts or depth perception problems can mimic or worsen spatial issues. At the same time, a memory or neurology check is equally important because cognitive decline can be masked as vision loss. Taking both steps ensures that treatable eye conditions are addressed and that early dementia-related changes are not overlooked. For those noticing these patterns at home, small adjustments can reduce risks while waiting for medical evaluation. Clear walking spaces by moving obstacles, improve lighting in stairways and hallways, and add supportive features like railings or grab bars. These are not solutions for the underlying issue, but create a safer environment that lowers the chance of falls and injuries. By responding proactively, families protect both physical safety and overall independence. Over time, spatial awareness problems often create emotional strain as well. A person who once navigated with ease may retreat from activities because the uncertainty of getting lost, stumbling, or colliding causes embarrassment. They may refuse to shop alone, limit driving, or avoid social activities altogether. This withdrawal reduces both daily movement and social contact, both of which are crucial for maintaining brain health. Noticing these behavior changes is another way families can track the impact of spatial decline and respond with understanding rather than frustration. The critical factor is repetition. Anyone can spill a drink, misstep on a curb, or feel disoriented when distracted. But when these issues return again and again in familiar places, especially over a short period, they reveal a deeper change. Those patterns are distinct from normal aging and should be seen as a red flag. Early recognition gives people the chance to adapt routines, improve safety measures, and receive medical assessment well before more visible memory problems appear. Recognizing spatial decline as more than occasional clumsiness allows families to reframe what they are seeing. Instead of dismissing or laughing off small mishaps, they can interpret them as important messages from the brain. This mindset transforms minor frustrations into early warnings, giving everyone involved the chance to respond constructively. Understanding these changes as neurological signals helps ensure individuals receive evaluation, support, and practical adjustments before independence is compromised. When the brain starts losing its ability to guide the body through space, it reveals itself early through small but repeated mistakes. Identifying these mistakes for what they are, early markers of dementia, offers families one of the most reliable opportunities to respond before larger declines emerge. By noting patterns, arranging medical checks, and making modest home adjustments, a pathway opens for safer, more supported living. The story doesn't end with movement or navigation alone. However, the brain also relies on sensory input, hearing, vision, smell, and taste to shape how we interact with the world. When these senses begin to weaken or shift unexpectedly, they may signal another set of early warnings worth close attention. Shifts in the senses. Changes in hearing, smell, taste, and vision are common early signs of neurological stress and are frequently linked with later cognitive decline. While most people picture dementia beginning with memory problems, the reality is that the brain often starts showing warning signals through the senses. Because these shifts blend so easily with what many view as ordinary aging, they are often overlooked. But when the senses change noticeably, it can point toward early processes in the brain long before memory loss becomes obvious. Hearing loss is one of the most researched factors. Struggling to follow conversations, especially in noisy environments like restaurants, may seem like a normal part of getting older. Yet large studies show that people with midlife hearing loss are more likely to develop dementia later compared to those without such difficulties. The reason appears to be that the brain must use extra mental energy to fill in missing words, reducing the resources available for memory, reasoning, and problem solving. Over the years, this extra load can accelerate overall decline. Hearing changes can also lead to withdrawal from social activities, since conversations become tiring or frustrating, which only compounds the risk by reducing stimulation and connection. Smell loss provides another signal, particularly in Alzheimer's disease. Difficulty identifying familiar scents, such as coffee or flowers, can appear years before memory problems arise. Research consistently shows that diminished olfactory function is closely associated with early Alzheimer's, making it one of the most reliable sensory red flags. Beyond impacting everyday pleasure, losing the sense of smell poses safety issues. A person may fail to notice spoiled food, gas leaks, or even smoke, adding household hazards to an already vulnerable situation. What appears to be a minor inconvenience is, in fact, a sign that disease processes may already be affecting the brain's pathways responsible for processing scent. Taste often goes hand in hand with smell. When taste perception dulls, the person may start oversalting food, adding extra sugar, or relying heavily on processed items to achieve flavor. While this looks like a shift in preference, it is often caused by the brain altering how it interprets signals from the taste buds. Over time, nutrition suffers. Meals may become less appealing and lead to weight loss, or unhealthy eating patterns may take hold. Both outcomes contribute to strain on overall health, which in turn affects brain resilience. Vision changes are also important, but can look different from typical eye problems. For some, the difficulty is not sharpness of sight, but the brain's ability to interpret what the eyes detect. Someone may misjudge depth, bump into furniture, overshoot a chair when sitting, or spill repeatedly when pouring liquids. Others may struggle with glare, find dim light disorienting, or fail to distinguish between colors that used to be obvious. These problems are tied less to the eyes themselves and more to the brain networks that process and organize visual information. As such, they often go unnoticed in routine eye exams, leaving families confused about why their loved one seems suddenly clumsy. Another subtle sensory warning comes from difficulty filtering sound. A once sociable person may dread gatherings because background chatter feels overwhelming. The brain can no longer separate the important voice from the surrounding noise, creating stress and fatigue. When this happens repeatedly, avoidance of social contact becomes natural, but isolation further depletes mental reserves. Families may mistake this as moodiness or loss of interest, when the real issue lies in sensory processing. Together, these types of changes highlight how the senses act as an early mirror of brain health. Loss of sensory input increases the mental effort required for daily tasks. The brain is forced to work harder just to keep up, and the strain can lead to withdrawal, loneliness, and faster decline over time. What seems at first like harmless inconvenience, turning up the TV, seasoning food differently, stumbling on curbs, may be part of a broader neurological picture developing beneath the surface. For families and caregivers, there are a few important signs worth checking for. Struggling to hear clearly in noisy rooms or conversations. Losing the ability to smell food, flowers, or household odors. Noticing taste fade, with a need for heavier seasoning. Misjudging depth or contrast, such as spilling liquids or tripping on steps. Once these patterns are observed, it becomes practical to take small but meaningful actions. Visit a doctor for a basic hearing test and a full eye exam, even if vision or hearing seem only mildly affected. Discuss with your doctor whether rehabilitation measures, such as hearing aids or updated vision corrections, make sense. While these steps cannot guarantee prevention, they often reduce isolation, improve communication, and lighten the brain's workload. Early adjustments can protect independence and maintain confidence, which are critical for quality of life. The senses provide constant information that allows us to connect, communicate, and engage. When they begin to weaken in ways that point beyond ordinary aging, they should be seen as signals to look more closely at overall brain function. By treating these early sensory changes as meaningful and not trivial, families gain a vital opportunity to act earlier rather than waiting for memory symptoms to appear. Of course, shifts in the senses are not the only early warnings. The way a person rests and restores at night also plays a crucial role. Some of the most overlooked changes in brain health reveal themselves through patterns of disrupted sleep. Sleep disturbances. Poor sleep is more than an inconvenience. It can both signal and accelerate changes in the brain. Research shows that deep, uninterrupted sleep allows the brain to perform essential cleanup, removing harmful proteins like beta amyloid and tau through a natural process called the glymphatic system. When sleep becomes fragmented or shallow, this cleaning process falters, and over time those proteins accumulate, disturbing the brain's ability to function properly. Because of this, sleep disturbances are now recognized as important early warning signs that something deeper may be happening neurologically. Not all sleep problems look the same. Frequent nighttime awakenings, long stretches of restlessness, or tossing and turning may be obvious. Others are more subtle, such as waking up tired even after many hours in bed, or struggling with persistent daytime fatigue. Falling asleep during conversations, drifting off while watching television, or needing repeated naps throughout the day can seem like minor inconveniences at first. Yet, constant daytime sleepiness often means that true restorative sleep is not happening at night. When this cycle continues, the lack of quality sleep drains energy and adds stress to the brain, making it harder to sustain focus or retain new information. One of the clearest sleep-related warning signs linked with dementia is REM sleep behavior disorder, or RBD. In this condition, The brain fails to suppress movement during dream sleep, causing people to physically act out their dreams. They might shout, punch, kick, or strike during sleep, sometimes with enough force to endanger themselves or a partner. RBD is strongly associated with Lewy body dementia and related disorders, often appearing many years before other cognitive symptoms set in. This makes it a particularly important signal to pay attention to, not simply a quirk of restless sleep, but one that points toward an underlying neurological pathway already being affected. Nightmares, too, can increase in frequency, becoming more vivid or distressing. While occasional bad dreams are normal, an uptick in intense or violent nightmares, especially without an obvious trigger, can be another early clue that the brain is under strain. Families might notice a loved one waking in fear, talking in sleep more often, or reporting unusually harsh dream content. These shifts are not just random. They can reflect changes connected to dementia risk. It is also worth noting that the risk is not limited to too little sleep. Research indicates that too much sleep, particularly if someone is clocking long hours in bed or consistently going to bed very early in the evening, is also linked with higher odds of dementia. A 2018 study found that people who regularly slept more than average or who repeatedly settled down before 9 at night had a significantly increased likelihood of later developing dementia. These findings underline an important point. Both insufficient and excessive sleep can function as warning signals when they appear regularly. The recommended target for most adults remains 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted nighttime sleep, a range linked to healthier cognitive performance. The consequences of poor or irregular sleep go beyond fatigue. Chronic sleep deprivation fosters inflammation in the brain, a chemical stress response that damages brain cells and speeds up the loss of function. Short term, this shows up as foggy thinking, slower reflexes, and forgetfulness. Long term, it helps create conditions where dementia can develop more quickly. Studies, including a report in The Lancet, suggest that widespread improvement in sleep quality could significantly cut dementia cases over time, highlighting just how powerful this one factor can be in preserving brain health. For individuals and families, the challenge is recognizing when disturbed sleep is no longer occasional but persistent. Many people assume lighter sleep comes with older age. And while some changes in sleep rhythms are expected, ongoing restlessness, repeated awakenings, or new patterns of daytime napping should not be seen as inevitable. They may represent more than aging. They may be markers of changes in the brain itself. Looking at patterns across weeks and months, instead of treating each bad night as isolated, is the surest way to see these problems clearly. What can be done if these warning signs are appearing? A first step is to discuss them with a doctor. Persistent sleep problems deserve medical attention because they may be tied to treatable conditions such as sleep apnea, thyroid imbalances, or medication side effects. Left unchecked, these problems can worsen the risk of cognitive decline. Once secondary causes are ruled out, doctors may recommend further evaluation or sleep studies to assess patterns more carefully. Alongside medical advice, adopting healthy sleep habits can make a real difference. A consistent sleep schedule, going to bed, and waking at the same times daily helps reinforce the body's rhythm. Keeping the bedroom dark, quiet, and cool supports deeper, more continuous rest. Limiting caffeine later in the day, turning off electronic screens an hour before bed, and using calming routines like reading or quiet stretching provide further support. Small adjustments can pay off over time by improving the depth and stability of sleep. For those already facing RBD or frequent nightmares, safety also matters. Padding sharp corners in the bedroom, using protective bedding, or even sleeping separately from a partner for a period may help reduce injury risk. These steps do not solve the neurological cause, but they create a safer environment while medical evaluation progresses. Families should also look at daytime patterns. If a loved one spends large parts of the day sleeping, napping for extended periods, or regularly nodding off in inappropriate settings, it is worth asking when true nighttime rest is being achieved. Sometimes short adjustments in daytime exercise, exposure to natural light, or meal timing help reset the balance between day and night sleep. Other times, the persistence of daytime sleepiness points to deeper processes and requires clinical assessment. Sleep disturbances can take many forms, but what ties them together is their role as both early indicators and accelerators of cognitive decline. Missing sleep deprives the brain of its nightly maintenance. Excessive sleep disrupts natural rhythms. Acting out dreams shows neurological networks under strain. None of these signals should be dismissed as trivial. When viewed as part of the larger picture, they provide one of the clearest opportunities to detect and respond to dementia risk early. Addressing sleep is not just about feeling rested. It is about protecting the brain's long-term resilience. By treating sleep problems seriously, whether through medical evaluation, practical adjustments, or lifestyle changes, individuals gain a vital chance to slow or possibly reduce dementia progression. Ignoring them, by contrast, allows harmful processes to continue unchecked, leaving the brain more vulnerable over the years. And while disrupted rest is one way the brain reveals its difficulties, another equally telling change is found in how a person engages with the world around them. Sometimes, instead of restlessness at night, the sign comes during the day when activities, hobbies, and social interactions gradually lose their appeal. Apathy and withdrawal. Apathy and withdrawal often stand out as some of the earliest emotional indicators of dementia, yet they are frequently misunderstood. Rather than being a case of sadness or discouragement, apathy reflects a loss of initiative. The drive to begin or sustain activities disappears. Unlike depression, which usually carries feelings of hopelessness or low self-worth, apathy is marked by indifference without emotional distress. For families, this can be confusing because the individual is not visibly upset, but simply seems detached from life. This distinction matters because it signals brain changes affecting motivation and engagement, not just mood. In dementia, regions of the brain that regulate motivation and social behavior begin to decline. The outcome is a gradual drop in initiative that affects nearly every aspect of daily living. A person who once filled their day with hobbies may abandon them without explanation, or someone once devoted to gardening might let the yard go untended for months. Once reliable routines, such as managing bills or preparing meals, may slip away, not out of deliberate choice, but because the spark to act is missing. These seemingly small changes are among the clearest ways apathy shows itself. The pattern is often quiet but unmistakable. An individual who was previously enthusiastic about family gatherings may now sit passively, contributing little to conversations. They may stop initiating contact with friends, preferring isolation or long stretches in front of the television. Even basic activities require repeated prompting, a reminder to get dressed, to eat, or to begin a daily chore. Over time, these shifts can leave the person less engaged, even though they still recognize loved ones and can, at least early on, recall past events. The change is not deliberate avoidance, but a reflection of weakening neural circuits that once supported social energy and self-starting behavior. It helps to recognize the difference between apathy and depression in practical terms. Depression typically includes sadness, guilt, or feelings of worthlessness, and individuals can describe those emotions when asked. Apathy, in contrast, lacks that verbalized sadness. What stands out instead is flatness, a consistent absence of motivation. A person no longer laughs, participates, or reacts much, but when pressed, they may not say they feel down. They appear blankly indifferent rather than discouraged, which is why family members often misinterpret the symptoms or dismiss them as simple aging. Recognizing this distinction is vital for caregivers and clinicians alike. Families often notice apathy, through three especially common examples. First, a person suddenly abandons hobbies that once defined them. The knitter leaves unfinished projects untouched. The cook who enjoyed preparing meals loses interest in cooking at all. Second, there is withdrawal from social participation. Someone who once loved conversation at family gatherings now sits apart, offering only short answers when spoken to. Third, daily routines stall. Simple tasks like dressing or paying bills are left undone until someone else provides instruction or encouragement to begin. These clear, observable signs show apathy in practice and make it easier for families to separate it from occasional mood changes. This change does not simply affect morale. It has direct consequences on health and independence. As initiative fades, meaningful activity falls away, leading to greater isolation. Missed conversations, fewer hobbies, and reduced social contact all limit stimulation that once challenged the brain. Without this input, decline can accelerate more quickly. Research has even shown that persistent apathy can predict the progression from mild cognitive impairment into Alzheimer's disease, underscoring its importance as an early warning. Recognizing apathy for what it is gives families a valuable opportunity to respond before memory loss becomes more pronounced. The impact of apathy is not just clinical but emotional, especially for caregivers. Families often feel frustrated that their loved one no longer engages or seems indifferent to events that should bring joy. A birthday, a holiday, or a meaningful outing may receive little acknowledgement. Understanding that this is not stubbornness but a neurological symptom can ease some of that frustration. It reframes the change from a personality flaw into a signal of brain decline, encouraging families to focus on support rather than resentment. Equally, it allows caregivers to view apathy as a diagnostic clue that warrants medical follow-up. Practical responses can help manage the effects. Once apathy is recognized, families should mention it to a clinician. Even when memory appears intact, reporting persistent withdrawal alerts healthcare providers to assess for cognitive changes. A clear description, such as no longer doing hobbies, needs repeated reminders for basic chores, or rarely participates in family events, can guide the clinician toward more targeted testing. This step is crucial because early confirmation of dementia opens opportunities for treatment planning, support services, and proactive safety measures. Beyond clinical evaluation, structured routines, and social efforts can soften the impact of apathy. Predictable schedules help reduce the burden of self-starting tasks. Simple visual reminders, daily checklists, or timed activities provide external cues that replace the fading internal drive. Encouraging social contact, even in smaller, less demanding settings, helps preserve engagement. Participation in gentle physical activity, group hobbies, or adapted community programs can sustain both mood and brain activity, even if the enthusiasm to initiate these activities is no longer present. While these steps cannot reverse apathy itself, they guard against the further decline that isolation and inactivity reinforce. Families benefit from setting realistic expectations, understanding that persistent apathy will not be solved by urging or pressure. Instead of telling a loved one to cheer up or try harder, the goal becomes creating an environment where small actions are easier. Success may mean making simple activities accessible, offering companionship rather than instruction, and accepting that initiative now has to come from outside rather than within. This approach preserves dignity while reducing tension in daily life. Apathy also reminds us that dementia's earliest changes are not always about memory. The absence of initiative can be present long before significant forgetfulness. This pattern makes apathy a valuable early sign to share with healthcare providers, especially when families otherwise feel uncertain about what they are observing. Reporting this faithfully can bring earlier clarity and help shape realistic plans for care. Families that act on it, rather than dismiss it as aging, often find themselves better able to adapt and support their loved one through coming changes. The lesson from apathy is clear. It should never be overlooked or excused as ordinary aging. When a person drifts away from hobbies, withdraws from social life, and cannot initiate daily routines without prompting, it signals neurological changes that deserve medical attention. By framing apathy as a symptom rooted in brain function, families avoid misinterpretation and ensure earlier opportunities for planning and intervention. Healthcare providers can then better explore whether mild cognitive impairment or early dementia is the cause and offer resources to support both the patient and caregivers. Loss of initiative shows us how dementia quietly alters behavior, replacing interest with detachment long before memory erodes. In the same way, small but repeated difficulties in other areas, especially those that affect communication, can reveal similar early warnings. These changes are often subtle at first, but they are no less significant for what they say about the health of the brain. Language and word-finding difficulty. Trouble with language and word-finding, often called aphasia, is one of the more noticeable early signs of dementia. These problems can appear before or alongside obvious memory loss, and they often catch families off guard. At first, the changes seem like occasional lapses, moments anyone might have when a word feels just out of reach. The important difference is how often they occur, whether they disrupt everyday conversations, and whether they show a pattern that grows over time. The earliest warning signs usually appear in conversation. A person may pause for long stretches, struggling to recall a word that once came effortlessly. They might substitute vague terms, calling a cup that thing, or referring to a table as the place you eat on. Others may repeatedly ask for names they already know or repeat the same question or phrase several times within minutes. On their own, these slips resemble normal aging. But when they multiply, becoming frequent, disruptive, and frustrating, they begin to reveal that the brain's language system is under strain. Language difficulties arise because dementia can affect the brain regions that control speech production and comprehension. Alzheimer's disease often shows up first with word-finding gaps, while conditions like frontotemporal dementia may cause severe language impairments earlier in the process. In both cases, once familiar vocabulary becomes harder to access. Instead of saying watch, a person might invent a substitute, like hand clock. The creativity masks the problem at first, but soon, substitutions, pauses, and disorganized sentences accumulate. This pattern points towards something deeper than distraction. It signals that the brain's ability to process and produce language is changing. Missteps in conversation also become more apparent in group settings. While quiet, one-on-one dialogue can sometimes be managed, the chaos of overlapping voices is far more difficult. A person may lose their train of thought, ask the same question over again, or fall silent to avoid drawing attention to their struggles. What families notice is not only longer pauses, but also a shrinking willingness to participate socially. Over time, what started as a few slips can alter how a person approaches gatherings, meetings, or even phone calls. Sentence structure itself also shows signs of decline. Instead of complex phrases, a person may shorten their speech into brief fragments or simple responses. Ideas that once flowed together may now seem scattered or incomplete. Another clue is when someone tells the same story repeatedly without realizing it. These repetitions can strain family relationships, but they are more than habits. They are clear symptoms that dementia may be affecting language systems in the brain. These changes are not limited to speaking. Writing and reading can also shift in subtle but important ways. A once eloquent writer might simplify letters or emails, leave thoughts incomplete, or repeat words. Reading long texts like books or newspapers may feel exhausting, with the person losing track mid-paragraph. As communication channels narrow, whether spoken or written, the person's connection to others begins to shrink. This disconnection can intensify feelings of isolation and frustration, both for the individual and their family. In addition to speech and writing, understanding language becomes harder. Giving instructions with multiple steps, such as set the table, then pour water, and bring out the bread, may overwhelm the individual. They may ask for clarification repeatedly or lose track midway. This shows that dementia affects not only the ability to produce words, but also to comprehend and follow them. When both sides of communication break down, daily interactions become strained, leading to misunderstandings and reduced independence. Families often dismiss these patterns as normal aging, which can delay recognition for months or years. The distinction lies in frequency and disruption. Normal slips are occasional and quickly resolved. Dementia-related changes repeat and escalate. For caregivers, paying attention to when pauses, substitutions, and repeated questions happen, and how often, provides valuable information to guide decisions about medical evaluation. These patterns help physicians determine whether the issues point toward Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, or another condition affecting language pathways. The social consequences of language decline often extend beyond simple communication difficulties. A person who once enjoyed telling stories or engaging with groups may retreat, avoiding situations that highlight their struggles. Families might mistake this withdrawal as apathy, when the true cause is frustration or embarrassment over repeated mistakes. This retreat erodes stimulation and interaction, further accelerating decline. In this way, subtle language challenges cause a cascade of effects reaching far beyond words themselves. Because these difficulties are so impactful, small adjustments at home can make a large difference. Caregivers can use strategies supported by dementia communication research, speaking slowly, avoiding background noise when possible, and keeping conversations one-on-one. Allowing extra time for the person to respond shows patience and lowers anxiety. Gently offering the missing word, rather than pressing or rushing, can also help. These accommodations protect confidence while making communication less stressful for everyone involved. Another adjustment is to create supportive environments for written communication. Offering simplified reading material, encouraging short notes rather than long letters, or even focusing on picture-based prompts can help maintain engagement. These strategies may not restore lost ability, but they allow people to stay active in ways that feel achievable. They also reduce frustration, helping individuals feel less cut off from the activities they once enjoyed. Families should also remember that language problems are not confined to Alzheimer's alone. Frontotemporal dementia, for instance, can begin almost exclusively with difficulties in speech and comprehension, long before memory is affected. In these cases, families are often misled into believing memory is safe, when in fact the disorder is progressing in a different area of the brain. This is why documenting specific examples is so important when meeting with a clinician. Notes about frequent substitutions, repeated questions, or consistent pauses can help doctors determine whether to investigate more specialized subtypes of dementia. The reality is that every misplaced word, every pause, and every unfinished story signals more than a casual slip. It reflects the function of the brain itself. Recognizing patterns of language difficulty provides families with an opening to seek medical evaluation early by sharing concrete examples of what has been happening, such as she asked the same question 3 times during dinner, or he calls the table the eating thing several times a week. Caregivers give clinicians the context needed to make informed assessments and guide next steps. Seeking help early does not end the progression, but it offers advantages. Clinicians can evaluate for aphasia, provide therapies that support communication, and help families adapt their conversations. They may also clarify whether memory-based decline or a language-predominant dementia subtype is more likely, shaping care in a more accurate way. Most importantly, It gives individuals and families the chance to put resources, strategies, and safety measures in place well before language decline becomes overwhelming. Language and word-finding problems may begin as small slips, but they send clear signals about what is happening in the brain. By recognizing and responding to them early, families not only protect communication, but also create space for support and planning. And just as changes in speech affect everyday interactions, shifts in emotional expression can also emerge, revealing another set of early difficulties that families may notice quickly in daily life. Mood and personality changes. Mood and personality changes are among the most visible early warning signs of dementia, and families often recognize them long before memory loss becomes obvious. These are not simply momentary shifts in mood due to everyday frustration. Instead, they represent deeper alterations in how the brain regulates emotion and social behavior. A person who was once steady or easygoing may suddenly become irritable, suspicious, or withdrawn, leaving loved ones puzzled and worried about what has changed. Because these symptoms often emerge quietly, they can be mistaken for ordinary stress or aging unless observed carefully over time. There are several clear patterns that provide important clues. One common change is new irritability or suspicion. Small inconveniences, like difficulty finding keys or background noise in the house, may provoke anger out of proportion to the situation. In some cases, repeated accusations emerge, such as believing that a spouse or caregiver is hiding belongings or mismanaging money. These behaviors feel unfamiliar to families who once knew the individual as calm or trusting, and they signal more than just a bad mood. Another shift is uncharacteristic anxiety or agitation. Everyday experiences that once seemed simple, such as shopping, attending a gathering, or riding in a car, can suddenly trigger uneasiness or restlessness. People may appear tense, pace around unnecessarily, or express fear in settings they once found comfortable. These changes are particularly confusing because the anxiety often has no clear cause, and attempts to reassure the person do not always make a difference. What families are often seeing is the effect of impaired brain regulation, not a conscious choice to overreact. Loss of empathy or inappropriate behavior can also emerge. Someone who was once thoughtful and sensitive might now respond bluntly or with little concern for others' feelings. Jokes may become inappropriate or poorly timed, creating awkward situations. At times, warmth and compassion are replaced by indifference, leaving loved ones feeling that the person is no longer themselves. This is especially notable in certain dementia subtypes, such as frontotemporal dementia, where personality and behavior changes frequently appear early, in some cases before memory is obviously affected. These symptoms can be particularly hurtful because they alter how families experience their relationships with the person. A final common change is sudden withdrawal. A once active participant in community life or family events may avoid conversations, decline invitations, or remain isolated at home. Family members may mistake this as tiredness or low energy, but in reality, it can be a signal that the person is withdrawing because social situations feel overwhelming, confusing, or uncomfortable. This withdrawal not only strains relationships, but also increases isolation, which in turn can accelerate decline by limiting stimulation and contact. Each of these examples, irritability or suspicion, anxiety or agitation, loss of empathy or inappropriate behavior, and withdrawal, represents a pattern that families can watch for. The important detail is repetition across multiple situations. One outburst or one withdrawn day does not always mean dementia is present, but consistent changes across weeks or months point to a larger issue affecting brain function. Recognizing these symptoms early can make it easier for families to connect them to possible neurological causes rather than attributing them to personality flaws. For family caregivers, these changes can feel deeply personal. False accusations, sudden anger, or cold remarks from a loved one are painful, especially when they come from someone who previously showed warmth or trust. Yet, understanding that these behaviors stem from changes in the brain and not from intent can reduce the emotional burden. Caregivers who reframe behavior as part of an illness are less likely to take remarks personally or see them as deliberate. This perspective allows them to respond with patience, consistency, and empathy despite the challenges. Because the symptoms directly affect daily interactions, families often adjust routines without realizing why. Crowded or noisy settings may be avoided to prevent agitation. Outings and social visits may be canceled to reduce the chance of confusion. Step by step, life becomes organized around preventing conflict, sometimes leaving caregivers isolated themselves. This is one of the reasons mood and personality changes are so important to recognize early. They have ripple effects that shape not only the person with dementia, but also the health and stability of everyone around them. When these changes become noticeable, one constructive step is to keep a written record. Documenting specific examples with dates and brief details allows families to provide clear information to healthcare professionals. Notes such as accused, spouse of stealing wallet, avoided dinner with friends after being enthusiastic before, or shouted in frustration over noise, help doctors see a pattern instead of isolated incidents. This concrete information is more useful than vague impressions and may speed up evaluation, leading to earlier support and guidance. Caregivers should also recognize that these symptoms create real strain. Witnessing a partner, parent, or sibling change so suddenly can feel like losing aspects of that relationship even before memory fades. Emotional support becomes crucial not only for the individual with dementia, but also for those closest to them. Counseling, caregiver support groups, and professional resources provide families with strategies, reassurance, and validation that their experiences are a recognized part of the disease process. Knowing that mood and personality changes are common, documented, and neurologically driven can help reduce feelings of guilt or frustration. Adjustments to daily life can ease some of the stress. Structuring predictable routines provides comfort for individuals experiencing anxiety or agitation. Reducing environmental triggers such as loud noises, unexpected changes, or crowded spaces often lessens irritability. Offering reassurance instead of argument when suspicion arises protects relationships from escalating conflict. For caregivers, keeping expectations realistic is essential. While it is possible to reduce triggers and respond with compassion, it is not always possible to restore previous behavior. Accepting this reality helps maintain emotional resilience. It is important to remember that not all dementia types present in the same way. While Alzheimer's disease frequently brings irritability and anxiety in its early stages, frontotemporal dementia is more likely to introduce personality changes such as loss of empathy or inappropriate behavior first. Families who observe these early signs should not attempt to assign a diagnosis, but should instead focus on sharing observations with a doctor. Specialists can place behavior within a clinical context and recommend next steps for assessment and care. The most difficult aspect of mood and personality shifts is how they reshape close relationships. A spouse who was once a partner in decision-making may now resist cooperation, leaving one person to shoulder responsibility alone. Children may feel as though a parent they knew well has been replaced by someone unfamiliar, despite memory being largely intact at the beginning. In these circumstances, families benefit from finding balance, recognizing the reality of the changes while still holding on to aspects of connection that remain. Simple shared routines, familiar activities, or moments of calm conversation can preserve continuity where it is still possible. As patterns emerge, families are faced with decisions that stretch beyond emotional strain. Irritability, fear, or withdrawal may not only change the atmosphere at home, but may begin to affect how daily tasks are performed. Left unchecked, personality changes can lead to unsafe situations, such as refusing help, misjudging risks, or resisting guidance during important routines. What begins as an emotional or social shift eventually carries consequences for independence, safety, and practical living. Recognizing these risks early makes it easier to plan for supports that will be needed in the coming stages. While memory loss is the most widely recognized feature of dementia, changes in mood and personality are just as important to notice for early recognition. They signal neurological changes that go beyond forgetfulness and reshape how individuals interact with the world and with those closest to them. Observing these patterns, documenting them carefully, and bringing them to professional attention are crucial steps not only for diagnosis, but also for protecting relationships and preparing for future needs. Understanding personality and behavior changes also creates a bridge toward recognizing when larger challenges begin. Emotional shifts often precede declines in areas such as judgment, daily responsibility, and problem solving. Once these behavioral red flags appear, families may soon discover that everyday safety and independence are being tested in new and unexpected ways. Declining daily function and safety, the ability to handle everyday responsibilities, is often one of the first areas to weaken when dementia begins to take hold. Daily routines that once felt automatic, managing bills, cooking a meal, or keeping track of medications, become inconsistent. At first, these appear as small oversights, but when they repeat, they reveal a larger pattern of declining judgment and reduced safety. Families who ignore them may only realize the seriousness after a preventable accident or costly mistake has occurred. Declining daily function does not mean a sudden inability to perform tasks, but a gradual erosion of the skills needed to carry them out reliably. Dementia undermines planning, follow-through, and decision-making, and this shows up most clearly in the rhythm of daily life. Someone may still know how to prepare a favorite recipe, but forget to turn off the stove burner. They might continue receiving monthly bills, but start missing payments or writing checks twice. These lapses are not about laziness or carelessness. They are concrete examples that the brain's ability to coordinate safety and responsibility is no longer intact. There are several red flags that families should monitor closely. The first is repeatedly leaving the stove on or forgetting to switch off appliances. A simmering pot, an unattended oven, or a coffee maker left running create risks that can escalate from smoke to fire within minutes. While anyone might forget once, patterns of repeated oversights are a strong signal that daily safety is compromised. Families may notice charred pans, burnt smells lingering in the kitchen, or melted cookware. These cues are early warning signs that the household is no longer as safe as it once was. A second red flag is unpaid bills or unusual financial decisions. Dementia affects not only memory but also judgment, which makes handling money increasingly difficult. At first, bills may be set aside and forgotten, or checks mailed late. Over time, impulsive errors appear. Ordering multiple products online without realizing it, giving money to callers who promise unrealistic rewards, or donating repeatedly to suspicious organizations. Studies show that individuals with early Alzheimer's markers are particularly vulnerable to scams, and families often discover the problem only after bank accounts or savings have been depleted. Tracking mail, reviewing statements, and watching for unexpected withdrawals can reveal these changes sooner. The third red flag is medication errors. Staying on top of prescriptions requires both organization and reliable memory, two areas that dementia quickly erodes. Pills may be skipped for several days, taken twice, or discarded in error. This inconsistency poses significant health risks, especially when medications regulate blood pressure, blood sugar, or heart conditions. Caregivers often find scattered pill bottles, half-finished blister packs, or logs with gaps and duplications. These signs show that what was once a consistent routine has broken down, leaving health and stability at risk. A fourth red flag is unsafe clothing or poor weather judgment. Choosing what to wear involves more complex decision-making than it seems. Recognizing outside temperature, matching items, and selecting what fits the occasion. As dementia progresses, these small decisions often falter. A person may leave home in sandals and a light sweater on a freezing morning, or wear multiple layers on a hot summer day. Shoes may be mismatched, or clothes put on inside out. At first, these errors look like eccentricities, but they reveal deeper difficulty assessing both personal safety and social norms. Over time, poor hygiene and skipped grooming become more common as self-care routines fall away. One of the hardest aspects for families is the unpredictability of these lapses. Success one day does not guarantee it the next. Dinner may go smoothly tonight, while tomorrow the same person cannot remember how to turn the oven off. Bills might be paid correctly one month, while the next month checks sit unsent or are made out incorrectly. This fluctuation reflects the instability of brain function in dementia. It creates stress because caregivers can never fully trust that something safe yesterday will remain safe tomorrow. This unevenness, more than outright decline, is often the source of sleepless nights for family members watching closely. Addressing these red flags requires both medical and practical steps. Clinical evaluation should always be arranged before assumptions are made, because conditions such as thyroid imbalance, vitamin B12 deficiency, medication side effects, or even untreated infections can mimic dementia symptoms. A thorough medical check offers clarity on whether daily function lapses truly stem from dementia or from more treatable causes. This safeguard is crucial, since many reversible health conditions can appear indistinguishable from the judgment breakdowns described above. Families should treat the appearance of repeated lapses as enough reason to schedule a professional evaluation rather than waiting for more obvious memory symptoms. At the same time, practical protective measures provide an immediate safety net. For financial issues, setting up automatic bill payments and transaction alerts can prevent delayed or duplicated payments while guarding against potential scams. For medication management, using a dispenser or pill box with built-in alarms ensures doses are tracked more reliably and reduces the likelihood of dangerous mistakes. These tools do not solve the underlying problem, but they buy time, protect health, and preserve dignity. Small changes like these can significantly reduce the stress families feel while preparing for more comprehensive solutions. Other home adjustments also make environments less hazardous, limiting access to kitchen appliances unless supervised, simplifying clothing choices with prepared outfits, and securing important documents and valuables all reduce sources of error. Families may view these steps as restrictive, but reframing them as protective support helps prevent household accidents, financial loss, or health setbacks. Each adaptation allows individuals to maintain independence a little longer, while protecting against harm that could accelerate the loss of freedom altogether. The broader goal is to recognize that changes in daily function represent more than frustrating oversights. They are tangible indicators that the brain's decision-making systems are weakening. Left unaddressed, these lapses pose risks not only to safety but to independence and dignity. Once families accept them as neurological signals rather than personal failings, the path forward becomes clearer. Combine clinical evaluation with targeted support, create safer routines, and plan proactively for further decline. In many cases, families only connect the dots after a crisis, a fire narrowly avoided, significant savings lost, or health thrown into jeopardy from missed medications. Acting earlier, when the first repeated lapses appear, reduces the chance of these crises occurring. While it may feel uncomfortable to impose safeguards or raise concerns, the alternative leaves loved ones exposed to risks that grow larger over time. The sooner action is taken, the more control families maintain over safety, quality of life, and future planning. Declining daily function reminds us that dementia disrupts far more than memory. It reshapes judgment, responsibility, and safety across the fabric of everyday life. Recognizing its earliest signals, such as abandoned bills, cooking hazards, or repeated clothing mistakes, offers a chance to intervene while independence is still preserved. With vigilance, practical supports, and medical guidance, families can protect those affected before avoidable harm occurs. And while struggles with daily tasks reveal one piece of the picture, another important signal emerges in how individuals track time and place. When orientation itself begins to slip, the risks shift into confusion about not only what to do, but also where and when they are. This next area brings its own unique set of challenges for families to notice: time and place disorientation. One of the clearest early warning signs of dementia is disorientation to time and place. This goes beyond simple forgetfulness. It means the brain can no longer reliably anchor a person to their surroundings or to the passage of time. The danger lies not only in confusion, but in the risks that follow: wandering, getting lost, or losing awareness of daily routines that keep life safe and predictable. Families often notice it gradually, first as missed appointments, then as confusion about days or locations, and eventually as repeated incidents that cause real worry. The first key indicator is repeatedly getting lost in familiar places. A person may step outside for a short walk around the block and suddenly not recognize their own street. What should be a simple trip to the corner store becomes hours of absence, leaving family members worried and uncertain of their return. Unlike forgetting directions in a new place, which anyone can experience, becoming lost in an environment lived in for decades points clearly to neurological decline. Some individuals are eventually found wandering by neighbors or strangers, unable to explain where they live. This pattern represents more than distraction. It is a direct signal that brain function related to orientation is breaking down. The second high salience warning is confusion around time itself. People with dementia may believe morning is night, dress for work long after retirement, or insist it is still the 1980s. They may show up for an event on the wrong day, or ask repeatedly about the month or year. Over time, conversations reveal this disorientation, with long-past memories discussed as if they just happened, or with questions raised about people who passed away decades ago. Ordinary aging causes occasional slips, but the consistent inability to align with day, month, or year signals neurological disruption. This confusion also undermines routines like meals, medication schedules, and appointments, since these rely on reliable awareness of time. The third sign is wandering without clear purpose. Instead of confusion only at home or during specific tasks, the person may begin walking aimlessly, leaving the house without shoes, or setting out with no explanation. Families sometimes describe individuals leaving at night for unclear destinations, or walking long distances before anyone realizes they are missing. Wandering creates serious risks: exposure to weather, traffic, or unsafe areas. Each episode adds stress to caregivers, who cannot predict when or where the next occurrence will take place. Safety becomes a daily concern, with doors, windows, and routines needing close attention. Inside the home, disorientation can appear in subtler ways. A person may walk into a room and suddenly forget why they are there, or ask the way to a bathroom they have used for years. They might sit in the kitchen uncertain whether their task was to cook, clean, or eat. These patterns make once familiar homes feel foreign, stripping away confidence and heightening anxiety in the process. Families may find themselves constantly redirecting or guiding a task that grows harder as lapses repeat more frequently. Behind these visible symptoms are neurological changes in the brain's orientation systems. The hippocampus, which supports memory, also builds mental maps of environments. Damage here contributes to the inability to recognize places or follow routes. Meanwhile, areas involved in sequencing and tracking time weaken, leading to the loss of chronological awareness. When these structures falter together, the result is a person unable to place themselves correctly in time or space. This overlap explains why disorientation becomes one of the clearest red flags in early dementia. The emotional impact is considerable. For people experiencing it, confusion about where they are or what time it is often brings fear, agitation, or restlessness. Some may insist they need to go home, while already sitting in their own living room. Others may panic when they cannot recognize a familiar street. Families, too, feel the emotional toll. Seeing a loved one become lost in ordinary environments or unable to orient themselves creates heartbreak. Caregivers can feel constant anxiety, worried that a moment's inattention could result in a disappearance or accident. These experiences remind caregivers that disorientation is not a trivial symptom, but one with real consequences for safety and well-being. Because the risks are so immediate, early safety planning is essential. Families can take practical steps to reduce harm right away. Identification bracelets with a name and emergency contact number should be worn by anyone showing signs of wandering. Door locking systems or alarms designed for dementia care can help caregivers know when someone has tried to leave at odd hours. Monitoring technology, whether in the form of motion sensors, cameras, or location trackers, provides reassurance and faster response if an individual does go missing. Local authorities, such as police or community safety programs, can also be alerted in advance so they know to respond quickly if a loved one is reported missing. Structured routines and visible cues inside the home also help. Large calendars, digital clocks showing the full date, and visible signage for rooms can provide orientation anchors. Consistency, meals at the same time, daily walks at predictable hours add stability, reducing the chances of disorientation. These strategies cannot stop dementia, but they give the person reliable external cues to compensate for failing internal ones. Families should not underestimate their impact. Small adaptations often mean the difference between independence and total reliance. Driving presents another layer of urgency. If someone displays disorientation in daily settings, they should not drive until evaluated by a clinician. Getting lost behind the wheel, even once, can place both the driver and others at risk. Caregivers need to approach this carefully but firmly. Driving privileges can be revisited if a physician determines safety, but until then, temporary suspension is the safest choice. This change often feels like the loss of freedom, yet protecting safety must come first. Addressing driving openly, guided by medical advice, allows families to balance independence with responsibility. It is important to separate these patterns from normal distractions or age-related slips. Forgetting what day it is during a long vacation or walking into a room distracted by a phone call is harmless. Dementia-related disorientation, however, repeats, worsens, and arises in contexts that should be familiar. Missing entire seasons, confusing decades, or being found far from home without explanation are not ordinary signs of aging. Recognizing this distinction helps families act before disorientation leads to crisis events. Prompt medical evaluation should always follow once these signs appear. A physician can investigate whether treatable conditions like infections, vitamin deficiencies, or medication effects are contributing to the problem. When dementia is the cause, diagnosis opens doors to planning, risk reduction, and support services. Families who act early protect not only safety but also quality of life by making changes before accidents or crises force. Urgent decisions. Disorientation to time and place illustrates how dementia cuts into the foundations of daily life. Getting lost, confusing years, or wandering without purpose go beyond forgetfulness. They show that the brain's systems for orientation and stability are breaking down. The risks to safety, to independence, and to emotional well-being are real. Yet families who recognize these indicators early, act on precautions, and involve medical professionals gain a chance to reduce harm and protect dignity. By treating disorientation as a meaningful warning, not just a frustrating quirk, care can shift from reacting to emergencies to preparing ahead. And while this sign has some of the most visible and urgent consequences, it is only part of the broader picture. Even smaller changes in movement, senses, or language can represent early signals from the brain that should never be ignored. The most important takeaway is that dementia often reveals itself first through changes in movement, senses, mood, or daily safety, not just memory loss. Watch for repeated signs such as leaving the stove on, getting lost in familiar places, or struggling with common tasks. Document what you notice and share specific examples with a doctor to rule out reversible causes. Early detection does not stop dementia, but it makes planning and support possible, helping to protect independence and quality of life. If you've noticed these signs in yourself or a loved one, share your experiences in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe for more practical, research-based guidance on senior health.